Hello? Can everyone see me? Do 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 do. Okay. Just making sure everything works.
Brides.
Okay, I think I know where we were. I am just horking up the chat right now. I see that there's already some active stuff going on. Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome to Step Back Tonight, that show that I said I would do every Tuesday. I see some people. You guys can see. Can you guys? Oh. Let's fix that. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So tonight is a special, okay. Every night of Step Back Tonight's a special night. But we're going to watch some of my older videos. And we're going to see some cool stuff. We're going to go through memory lane again and watch some of the old Step Backaroo videos. But in the meantime, I'm sure I can talk to you folks, you fine, kind folks, for a little bit before we get started. So let me just, while I get my thing ready, I'll just, boop-a-doo. Oh my, okay. I'll just transition to the full screen for a little bit, and we'll talk for a little while, see what everyone's questions are, and we'll pick up from there. Yeah. So, for anybody who is new to this show and somehow still stuck around through all of that weirdness, this is Step Back Tonight. It's a weekly show I do where I talk to friends, all of you guys out there in internet land, and we chat about things. And then soon, I'm going to we do something every week. Some weeks I play games, some weeks I just hang out with you guys, sometimes I do alternate history scenarios. And tonight we kind of do this thing where I'm going through the old Step Back videos and sort of reminiscing, if you will. All right. So let's take a look at what people are asking. So you listened to a Peter Coffin interview. At one point, they asked him who'd enforce the contracts between communes if there's no state. How would you answer that? Geez. Start with the easy stuff. So let me think. Let's say that, okay, enforcing contracts is sort of a thing that would be held up by social reliance. Like the whole thing about how any sort of social network functions is that they are reliant on other people upholding their contract to help others, to be part of a community. And in the same way, they have to give out. So basically what that would mean is, more or less, the people who would be the enforcement would basically be the fact that nobody is completely self-sufficient, and without their needs being taken care of, they would take care of others. I mean, I think that honestly, in such a context, the motivations for these things are just sort of like, what's the motivation to just like cut off all ties and be a dick to everybody? Just because it's a theoretical thing that could happen, I don't see it as a thing that would be common, especially since almost all communities, especially communities today, are not self-sufficient farming communities and rely on highly interconnected systems of trade and resource exchange in order to function. So I don't really see why someone would do it. And if they did want to do it, if they wanted to go completely off the grid on their own for reasons, I mean, That would be a strange thought. It does mean there will be a lot of politics. There will be a lot of negotiation and a lot of, discussion. But that's fine. That's a good thing. Communities discussing with each other, sometimes not agreeing and having to work out their issues. Because at least in that case, the stakes are local and the people who are involved with it are directly affected. And hopefully everybody's voice would be seen at the table. So, in my opinion, it would be a thing. What about strange desert cults with child marriage like the Mormon ones? Oh boy. There you go. You stumped me. Anarchism is over. We can't handle the child marriage Mormon people, therefore anarchism's done. No, honestly, I don't know what the solution is at this point. I don't have all of the answers for everything, especially for questions I've had all of 3 seconds to think over. So I don't really have an answer, but that is definitely something that we would need to figure out a solution for, because you definitely don't want a world where people are marrying children. That would be just terrible. Okay, so that's the first question out of the way. Second question we got here. Oh, and also, I should probably say, because I just, came in and then all of a sudden got right into the questions. This is my new computer. You might notice it's very, very quiet, which is really nice. I'm so surprised that how quiet this computer runs and also how powerful it is. I'm really excited to start making videos. I've already been starting research on the next one, and hopefully I'll be writing something pretty soon. So there's some pretty good stuff coming down the pike, and I'm so happy to be doing this. But yeah, the month without a computer is, the month without a computer was rough. And I tried to make my videos without them, but to be honest, I didn't have the books, I didn't have a lot of the stuff needed, so here we are. Okay, next question. Thoughts on the recent Peter Coffin drama? I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard about recent Peter Coffin drama. There's always, random people who are trying to start shit with him, but honestly, most of them are either trying to dig up something he said 10 years ago and try to pass that off as a current opinion of his, or, trying to make some sort of weird association with all the stupid Gawker shit. So I don't really think it, or you're just trying to play more radical than thou, which I know happens a bit with him, but I don't exactly know what the actual drama is. I don't know what the thing is at the moment. I also don't know how far behind I am on. I don't know how long the stream delay is at the moment. Coffin said something years ago. Communism debunked. Oh boy. All right. Let's see. What's the next question? Michael Kirshner wants to know, what does everyone think will happen when Trump goes live on TV at 9 Eastern time? I think that I do know that if he doesn't declare a state of emergency, he's doing something. It's either going to be about his path for shutting down the government, or more likely about getting funding for his border wall. And the whole talk is that the strategy he's putting in place is to make to declare a state of emergency in order to do it. And if that's the case, then I would say, well, watch my channel watch my channel in the next couple days, because that's what my next video is going to be about. As soon as I can, record the video. Besides that, I would probably say it might be that he's made some sort of arrangement for opening up the government for passing some sort of thing, but I really highly doubt it. I do think it's going to be the state of emergency declaration, in which case my video on Thursday will be very apt, which is nice. But also it means that some pretty bad stuff for America, like the potential end of U.S. democracy and the beginning of a dictatorship. So that's great. That's just awesome. All right. Hey, Tristan, on Thursday, Trump will be only 60 miles away from me because he's trying to get support for the border wall on the border. Well, you definitely wouldn't want to build a border wall anywhere else. What do you think will happen at the rally? He'll say a bunch of dumb shit. A bunch of people in bad hats will hoot and holler about how great he is. He knows what he's doing. He's getting all the Facebook grandpas and the Fox News grandpas and getting them all worked up so he can get. He's always campaigning to get his ideas, more out in the public and getting some stuff going. So this is of no surprise. Oh boy. Okay. The next question we got here is, do regular people have enough time or interest for direct democracy? Would it not be better to have elected delegates take care of daily administration? No. I do think that any organization that is big enough that it needs elected delegates is too large to be a democratic one. I do think that direct democracy is a thing that regular people would have time or interest in if it just fulfilled a few things that it needed to function. Specifically, like the reason why people aren't invested in local stuff right now is because everybody is overworked and everybody is pretty jaded about what they can actually do. I do think that if you had this sort of, if you're going from this commune type structure that is within Dunbar's number, which is the whole thing that was talked about on non-compete a little while ago, that people under an anarchist economy, there would be a lot less hours spent working. People would probably only work a few days a week. It would not be the competitive grind that it is here. And so you would have a lot more time to spend on things like local engagement. And when you go, and also because these communes are kept small enough that you have a passing knowledge of all of the people who are involved with it, you're going to want to go for social reasons, if that's your thing. But on top of that, it should be close enough that it'll be pretty accessible to you. Like, for example, if we were to keep all of the people within Dunbar's number, there would probably be 2 or 3 communes in my apartment building, which would show just how small these things would be. Which means that there would probably be, there's one meeting place that we would meet up. But on top of that, there would also be other things to deal with, or other the things you decide on don't necessarily have to happen all the time, because people would only need to meet when they have, big decisions to make. And then on top of that, when you do meet up, you actually have a real impact in the things that could be done, which today, you vote now mostly because you just don't want the worst possible thing to happen, which is usually what's being offered in front of you. And you vote to try and stop the worst possible outcomes happening in your election, which is not exactly strong motivation to get out there and be civically engaged. But hey, if you're doing if you're doing small things like this, perfectly fine. I think that you'd probably find that is a pretty likely scenario. Okay. I do think that there's a lot of people who will be things are fairly likely to happen that you'll feel more engaged, you won't be overworked, that people will be a lot more involved in their daily government stuff. And so if that's the case, voluntary democracy, you don't have to get involved in everything. I think that it would work. I feel like I'm talking in circles now, so I'm going to move on. Reading Homage to Catalonia, was wondering if there's any good resources or books regarding the Spanish Civil War and the various anarchist societies that popped up. There's a lot of stuff that's like on, I think is it Libcom? Or the Anarchist FAQ? The Anarchist FAQ is like a very poorly named word for the document, but there's a lot of stuff in the Anarchist FAQ that talks about the anarchists during the Catalonian sort of Spanish Civil War time. Libcom.org, I want to say, has a bunch of stuff on it that you can check out. But I'm drawing a blank as to like one really good book that you'd want to check out, because it's honestly, I don't think it's a thing that's gotten a lot of recent and in English scholarly attention, which is sad. Okay. What do you think about the recent RCMP stepping up the war with First Nations people? I think it's fucking disgusting. So for the Americans in the audience and for the non-Canadians in the audience, you thought that your like Keystone XL pipeline debacle was bad. Canada has like 3 of those going all the time. Because I don't know if you know this, but we have one province in the entire country that has basically one of the 2 political parties that's always in power completely under their thumbs. We've got the Conservative Party of Canada, which is like our right-wing party that is in power, the only other party except for the Liberals that have held government. They basically are a party that works almost exclusively for the almost exclusively to serve the interests of Alberta, which is our major oil producing province. And so Canada's got tons and tons and tons of oil pipelines getting built to make sure that the economic interests of Alberta are being properly served. And even though they all vote Conservative in Alberta, Justin Trudeau is bending over backwards to try and appease the Albertans, because Justin Trudeau is a very bad leader of countries. And so he's been pro-pipeline ever since he was elected. And it involves, because Canada has a lot more Indigenous people, building a lot of pipelines through sovereign Indigenous territory, and even breaking, like in America, there's a lot less legal power for Indigenous people, but in Canada, there are treaties that they can point to and things like that, and the government's just blatantly violating those and building these pipelines straight through protected Indigenous territory. And Indigenous tribes are all over the country, but especially in places like Alberta and British Columbia, are trying to resist the expansion of these oil pipelines. You know, a resource that Canada needs to be, that is basically doubling down on trying to maximize the output as much as possible, when at the same time we need to be not using it because oil is going to kill us all. But since Alberta has decided that the extinction of humanity is secondary to making sure that economic growth does not stop. And so it's so the RCMP, which is our federal police, but also basically the police of like 8 of the 10 provinces, have went into an Indigenous area that was with like highly militarized stuff on, and basically forced the Indigenous people with brutal force off of their own territories so that they can build a pipeline through it. That happened yesterday. There's been some sympathy protests today. I actually ran into somebody who I knew, ran into somebody that I met at one of the Toronto meetups just like by happenstance at the subway today, and she was telling me that she had just come from a sympathy rally with these groups and been filming things. So It's a pretty big thing, and I'm kind of surprised that it's not getting more international attention. But yeah, it's been pretty bad. Only bro, basically Peter Coffin is in denial that his friend is maybe but very likely a serious sexual harasser. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to comment on it. I don't know any details. I've never talked to anybody about this. This is literally the first I'm hearing about it, so it would be very bad for me to comment on things like that. Dorian Sapiens. A historian could give you a play-by-play, but a poet will tell you what it felt like. Neruda watched his friends get arrested and killed, and it broke his heart. Oh, that's true. Pablo Neruda, who I think was possibly killed during the Operation Condor. I think that was a thing that I remember coming across in my research, that he's possibly one of the disappeared. What do you think of the 5 best choices for the Dems to run in 2020? In my mind at the moment, you've got Sanders, you've got Elizabeth Warren. They could try to really push the agenda of try to push the constitutional thing and try to get AOC to run for president, because she's technically too young to run for president. But if they could probably challenge that in the Supreme Court and win. But honestly, I don't expect that to happen. So in my mind, it's really Sanders or Warren at this point, or the Democrats will lose. I do think that if they pick Joe Biden, if they pick Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or any of those people, that they are basically guaranteed to lose. You might get some traction with Tulsi Gabbard, but Tulsi Gabbard is way more hawkish than even Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And Elizabeth Warren's actually pretty hawkish. But she's like really hawkish and also has ties to Hindu nationalist groups. That's why when I support Tulsi Gabbard, I support her in the capacity of a vice president, but not as a president, because she has key skills and influences, but really I wouldn't trust her with like the driver's seat. But I do anticipate that if Sanders or Warren can pull off a nomination, then the Democrats will probably win in a gigantic fashion. But if they don't, then, welcome to 4 more years of Trump. I could honestly see if the Democrats run a bag of money, which is basically everybody else running, that the Democrats will lose, Trump will get reelected, and I think that even the Democrats might even take the Senate. But if you can watch my video that comes out on Thursday, you'll know that really Congress won't matter by that point, because you can just declare a permanent state of emergency, and the president is basically a dictator at that point. I heard they may run Beto O'Rourke. Yeah, they might run Beto O'Rourke, because the Democrats are addicted to losing. And so choosing somebody who lost an election and then getting them to run for president sounds very Democrat, especially somebody who won't commit to any progressive agenda, nor even call himself a progressive, which is like the easiest thing you could do, But, here we are. This is like this primary that's coming up is basically the war for the soul of the Democrats. This is where the Democrats are going to decide if America's whole democratic experiment basically ends. Are they going to even basically try and do and change the deep foundational problems that are wrong with America? Or will they just double down on America is already great, yes, we can, and let America still fester and decay and basically hand the Republicans the country for all time? Because, trust me, two terms of Trump, you will not have a democratic nation at the end of that. We'll talk. Yeah. Let's. I find it hard to understand how you'd have intercommune politics without representatives. You would have big meetings. These are all voluntary participation. Being a person, having like a meeting with two groups of people and having like lots of people come out, it's not unheard of. If you've worked in a union, you would know that these meetings happen all the time. Do you believe multicultural is a misnomer in the sense that we can have multi-ethnic states and agree on the same progressive values rather than multicultural where values can clash? No. I think that there's a subtle reactionary bent in the statement there. I would say that there are different cultures that have different emphases and different things, have different things going on in their lives, that as long as they can be okay with a pluralistic mindset, the idea that what might be good for me is not necessarily universal to everyone, which is like kind of like the one thing you need to have a multicultural society function, that people can do things different from you and you can disagree on what those are, then, you know, then you can have a multicultural society and not have that kind of friction. Unfortunately, that's where the issue comes up, because like Canada, for example, tries to pride itself on being a multicultural society, but still has a colonial, Western European white heterosexual like mindset, which makes it harder to be people to come from other cultures and come here and be who you are and not hurt others. I don't think that anybody who subscribes to the concept of multiculturalism is like for oppression and things like that. That's definitely like, that shit you gotta leave at home. But I do think that framing it as anti-multicultural has problems, because you're basically saying that they need to assimilate or they need to westernize in order to be accepted here, when you can be non-oppressive and still not be Western. I would argue it actually helps you. Okay. Is it accurate to call the Romans homophobic when their hang-up was to do with whether you were top or bottom rather than if you were having sex with other men at all? I mean, there's, like, I guess, like, to the different degrees. Like, the thing is, like, Roman society had degrees of homophobia. It was a very, very, like, you have to think, when you think about the past, especially, like, 2,000 years ago, like with Rome, that the past is a very foreign nation. It's another planet. They did have a sort of masculinist, as you said, you're talking about a top or a bottom type thing, but also, like, Rome still did not have acceptance for gay families or gay marriage. It did not have, it did not accept gay relationships outside of sexuality. There was very little, like, that was still a thing that was not part of accepted culture. That's what I'm talking about. Like, even people who practiced homosexual, like, sex were not allowed to, they weren't, like, necessarily ashamed of it, but they weren't able to, say, get married to their partners or things like that. Or adopt children, or, well, I guess they could adopt children. That was pretty easy back then. But there's stuff to do with that. There was still a heteronormative legal system built on top of it. Now, I'm not like a classicist, so I don't really know a whole lot about Rome. You could probably tell that like about 0 of my videos are about Rome. It's because it's not really my area of expertise. But this is the concept of homosexuality in Roman society as far as I can tell, or as far as I can remember from the things that I pieced together. All right. Gad Yariv, whom, like, it's the middle of the night for because he lives in Israel. How do you handle the toxicity of your comment section? How do you maintain your sanity needing to administer the comment section? Well, it's tough at first, that's for sure. But I'm very much like a person who has over the years sort of let that stuff roll off my back. Honestly, a lot of comments don't bother me anymore. A lot of the like straight up like horrible stuff, because of like blacklisted words I have in my comment section, just end up for review. And anything that's like blatantly terrible, I'm very happy to just, you know, shadow ban them from the channel and the comment goes away and I never have to see them again. So it's really not, that stuff doesn't really get to me all that much, because I'm a cis hetero white man, and so I don't have any identities for them to attack. So like, you know, for me, it's very often just cleaning up the comment section. It's very much just like fumigating the termites every morning. But I took this is something I tried to do in 2018, but I've made it an official policy for 2019, which is mute early, block often. And I definitely apply that in my comment section, where first time somebody shows that they're a terrible person, they're gone. I don't need that. I don't need that in my comment section. And I don't have to put a lot of and it makes the comment look a lot better. All right. What can left-wing activists from Islamic countries do to help the West? Sorry. What can left-wing activists from Islamic countries do in the West to help Situaci without playing for the right wing? Rizzi Gay Indo comic was raised by the U.S. right for attacking Salafists. So Nusantara Rising, I'm not quite sure I understand the full question. If you could possibly rephrase this question so I can answer it, I would be happy to answer it or give you an answer. Wait, so Trump declares a state of emergency, he'll gain dictatorial powers. What do us American citizens do? Oh, that is a tough question. Because, yeah, I think somebody said revolt, and then when you have no options for voting left, that's pretty much all you got. Which, you know, that's not a thing I say lightly as somebody who despises the concept of violence and thinks that it's actually rather counterproductive. But, when you've lost any ability to actually, like, that's not the situation in front of us right now. That is a hypothetical situation. But I do think that I hope that more people than are currently awake about what's going on right now. Oops. I guess Chapo Trap House is playing Halo. I hope that more people would get woke and get pretty radical pretty fast if, say, Trump declared that Iran was interfering with the next election and that there's a planned terrorist attack on American voting stations, and so they are going to send the military to watch over the voting sites, but they can't guarantee anyone's safety, so that it might not be safe to go out and vote today. On top of that, saying that they're going to have to put certain protections on what websites can raise the top of search engine results because of Iranian interference in the American election, and only putting pro-Trump stuff at the top and all sorts of stuff like that. If they start actually actively clamping down on elections. I would hope that more people would wake up to what's going on, because once you actually start really fucking with the electoral system, like in overtly dictatorial ways, then I think that's a thing that people would be pretty. But these are the kinds of things that Trump would not be outside of. He would not be going outside of his powers if declared in a state of emergency, like those things. Because there are precedents that have been set up in various areas, but also on top of that, Trump's, or the president in general, since there's no constitutional discussion as to what actually makes there's no constitutional limits on what constitutes a state of emergency. So what powers the president has in a state of emergency are woefully undefined and are fairly wide in scope, which that makes this question about that makes that, like, if he declares a state of emergency at 9 o'clock, this is like, I don't think that this is going to be the thing that leads to a dictatorship, but it does mean that he has in his tool belt, depending upon how vague he actually makes a state of emergency, the tools to undermine Congress to do things by, like, decree, which, given that there is a Democratic House, and given the way that the Senate is shaking out in 2020, there's very likely to be a Democratic Senate. So if he is second term, he has a Democratic Congress. He has the tool of the state of emergency to basically bypass Congress for a lot of things, which that basically removes, like, the biggest check on his power. And honestly, he could do a lot of things to mess with elections and basically ensure that the Republicans never not get elected. So these are... It's a bit of a slippery slope argument, but it is a thing that is that we should be aware of, that using a national emergency, the powers that are supposed to be in a time of, like, actual emergencies, can lead to fairly disturbing precedents. And if he uses it again, this could be bad. All right. Last week you said all human societies have homophobia. Is it true Native North Americans were an exception to that? Again, yes and no. They were very, they were a very accepting, depending upon the society anyway. There was a lot of acceptance for homophobia, or for homosexuality. The thing, though, is that, again, marriages were never opened up in their definition. Now, marriage has a lot of very vague and very different concepts in different cultures, but there's still a very heteronormative stance in the center of a lot of cultures, even a lot of indigenous cultures. For example, a lot of Mesoamerican cultures in Mexico practice polygamy, specifically polygyny, and marriages and couplings and families were still considered fairly heteronormative. While having gay sex was, like, not considered a crime, that is a very small part of homosexuality, because it still excludes homosexual families, homosexual relationships, things like that. Unions and communes don't have individual people tasked with negotiating agreements with each other. That's all I mean when I say use the term representative. Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is pretty normal. I think it's just the decision-making power delegated to other people would be a problem. Thoughts on the government shut down the U.S.? It's not surprising. Something dumb like this was bound to happen at some point. So this is not a surprise to me at all. I'm actually surprised this didn't happen last year. That there was like a last minute decision made to basically trade DACA to stop the wall getting built. It's like, oh yeah. So all of those Democrats like Chuck Schumer, they basically sold the Dreamers up the river in order to get to avoid a government shutdown. But I think it's going to be like, government shutdowns are going to be pretty standard in the future. Just because if Trump doesn't get his wall in this set of things, he's going to keep pushing for it. And he's shown that he's pretty obstinate, even though he knows this. Maybe he doesn't know that this actually like destroys his support, and so it's a problem. Last stream we talked about Peronism. You said you didn't know enough to answer. You should read about it. It's relevant in relation to Trumpism. Very similar. Okay. Peronism. Isn't the Peronism the space on the man? Oh wait, that's the perineum. Okay. Oh yeah. Federal government employees are not getting their paychecks this Friday. That is when things get really nasty. We're gonna see what happens now that federal workers are not getting paid. Are there situations where violent revolutions is a good idea because anything is better than the status quo? Like if you're dealing with a North Korea type situation in your country? Yeah, I do think that violence is the tool that you use when all other tools have been expended. And I mean, North Korea, an example in North Korea, like I don't think there's going to be a really easy, safe way for the North Korean people to gain any sort of voice in the North Korean government that doesn't involve literally overthrowing the dictator that basically rules their country. Which sucks because there's no way that will happen without a lot of suffering and a lot of bloodshed, which will sour a lot of people to the concept of whatever government comes next, because revolutions are messes, and any way that you can avoid them will result in a more stable future. Thoughts on the TTC privatizing under Ford? Sucks. Privatizing succeeds in doing two things to any government service: making them more expensive and making them worse. The TTC is going to get more expensive and it's going to get worse if it's privatized, because the world sucks. Hopefully we can get an NDP government in Ontario in 2022 and nationalize it, along with electricity, because Kathleen Wynne partially privatized our electricity system, and we should get that back too. And maybe the Highway 407. Actually, there's like a big list of things that the Liberals and the Conservatives over the years have privatized that we could just start taking back. Hell, let's nationalize Amazon. I feel like the fact that like we're moving towards more and more monopolistic companies that basically control all of the economy, that like you could have communism like really easy if you just said, hey, we're nationalizing Amazon. Now Amazon is a public service. If you think about it, all of a sudden that's a lot of means of production that just got taken away. Wouldn't that be something? Anyways, do you think it's possible for society to develop advanced technology without inventing the concept of private land ownership? I feel like everything goes downhill when that happens. I think that it would be really easy to do such a thing because, yeah, I think that private land ownership. So, private land ownership really became a thing with capitalism. The concept of ownership was a lot more fluid and loose before then. So, I don't know. If you are a strict Marxist, you would say that capitalism is a necessary form as the means of production develop, but I don't believe that Marxism is a science. I wouldn't be that mean to Marxism. So I think that there's definitely ways that we could advance highly advanced society that doesn't need private land ownership. All right. Left from Islamic countries who criticize Islamism are worshipped by the Western right. Okay. Islamists are sometimes praised by the Western left merely for supporting the liberation of Al-Quds. Okay, so you're talking about Islamism. And I would say if in Nusantara Rising, I imagine if you are from a Middle Eastern country, especially a Muslim majority country of any kind, you'll probably be able to answer this a lot better than I can. But yeah, so basically, can the left in Islamic, like Muslim majority countries, oppose Islamism, which in some countries is a rather progressive ideology, but in some countries it's also rather hardline conservative ideology. The thing is, Islamism is also kind of an open signifier, and it actually can mean radically different things in different countries. But you can definitely cause the fact that like this comes up. I think there's a wonderful podcaster that runs a podcast called Polite Conversations, and her name is Ina, and she is she's a former Muslim who is critical of like both Islamophobia but also of like the radical conservative movement within, you know, some of these circles. And she's complained about this quite a bit, where every time she criticizes Islamism, all of a sudden she's getting these like, or criticizing any sort of like radically conservative movement in Islam, she gets these like super right-wing people coming out in support of her, and she's like, I really don't need this shit. I don't really want you supporting me. And I think that that's actually a very I think there's a couple like things that are getting miswired, which is that in the West, Muslims are a minority group, an ethnic minority, a religious minority within a country that, especially those who come from the Middle East, North Africa, or South Asia, are getting targeted for racist hate crimes and racist backlash by white conservatives. And the American left has then, you know, responded by supporting Muslims and supporting Muslim people in their countries. The thing, though, is that this dynamic is different when you get to Muslim majority countries, where they're not a beleaguered minority, and there are a lot of very dangerous elements in these countries that are that need to be opposed, like, say, the government of Saudi Arabia and the like entire Wahhabist movement, or like radical militant Salafis and things like that. And those who are fighting against it show the message of being anti-Islam, even though many of these left that you talk about are Muslims themselves. But those who are Islamophobic latch onto the message. And I think that there's like a really fundamental miscommunication that's going on. And I think that anybody in the West who are too shallow in their understanding of Islam and the Islamic world will take the wrong message on either side. And I think that I don't have an answer for you, but I do know that it's pretty annoying that you have to deal with that stuff. I would think that one thing that the left in Islamic countries, I think you just said that you're from Indonesia? Either Indonesia or the Philippines. I have to scroll up and look. I imagine that it's Indonesia, because Indonesia is a Muslim majority country, and your name sounded more yeah, Indonesia. Yeah. Nusantara sounded way more Indonesia than Philippines. Okay. So I gotta close Slack. So yeah, I think that there's something to be said that I would think that attacking radical clerics and right-wing, like, ultra-conservative Islamic figures, but meeting them on a theological ground. Like, I do think that one of the best things that happened in the fight against ISIS was the letter that was signed by several hundred Muslim clerics about how ISIS is violating Quranic law and how they are, you know, not very good Muslims. I did a whole video basically outlining their arguments. It's one of my most viewed videos, and I think that if you are on the left in a country like Indonesia and you are criticizing Islamist figures, meeting them where they are, like saying, like, criticizing them not because of their religious views, but criticizing them because their religious views are at odds with the Quran would be, like, attacking the religion as a whole will be less effective, and that will get the, you know, the right and the West on your side, much less than, like, sort of having the dialogue Muslim to Muslim about having theological issues with things they're doing, which I know means that that would mean basically imams would have to take up the fight, but supporting those imams and supporting positive change within the Islamic religion would be great. All right. Is marriage really the factor to judge homophobia by? And how can you have gay families before artificial fertilization? Isn't accepting sexual fluidity good enough? The reason why I would say that, like, it's the idea of the family structure is, like, it's basically the issue is heteronormativity. If marriage is only between man and woman, which, you know, is a thing in many of these cultures. But then on top of that, I think that it's more just, maybe marriage is the wrong word to say, but not having normalized same-sex partners. The fact that you can't have an adopted child raised by two parents of the same sex. Mostly because, sometimes because there's no nuclear family and it's a lot more of, like, a greater thing. There's a lot of times where, like, in a lot of indigenous cultures in America, for example, a child would probably grow up closer to their aunts and uncles than their father, which, you know, is its own thing. But just the idea that somebody could not have as their romantic partner someone of the same sex shows a sort of heteronormativity. But then I'm also unpacking because, like, love and erotic love and sex and stuff like that is way more complicated in cultures like this than, like, say, the way we think about it today. And so I'm kind of blanketing over a whole lot of complexity here, and I do think that somebody way smarter than me on these subjects should really speak more to it. Is it a problem to delegate decision-making to other people if the commune can just vote to remove or overrule those people if they don't like what they do? I guess not. Didn't Britain recently privatize their trains and it was a disaster? Probably. Did you play Morrowind? I played it a little bit. I never bought it, but I had a friend when I was in high school who had an Xbox, and he had Morrowind. And I used to, sometimes when I was at his house, play Morrowind, like for maybe an hour or two. But I never really played that much Morrowind, sadly. I bought it. I bought it on Steam. I just never installed it and played it because, of course, I haven't. Or I don't even know if I've even bought it on Steam. I think I might have. Wouldn't nationalizing Amazon empower the particular state too much? Isn't the anarchist solution the Amazon employees owning Amazon or some other international corporation? Yeah, that's true too. I would that would be good. Yeah, the workers taking over Amazon. Just yeah, if the government just nationalized Amazon and then gave it to its workers, that would be like a significant portion of the economy all of a sudden socialized, which would be awesome. But yeah, like I was definitely sort of parodying like more Marxist-Leninist idea of how to get communism, but yeah, gotta keep with the anarchist answer. Can you make a video about the upcoming presidential elections in Ukraine? I could try. I'm not really super great on Eastern European stuff, and Eastern Europeans are very, very, very touchy about even things being slightly wrong. And then not a lot of stuff gets published in English, and I don't really speak the languages there. I don't even speak languages similar to the languages there. And so oftentimes I feel like I'm just inviting myself to get in trouble when I do something like that. All right. I do remember that I had a friend, that friend who had Morrowind, that friend who I played Morrowind with, he had a he made a ring that he enchanted called Big Fucking Jump. And he could he enchanted it so that he would jump and he would jump 3 squares or something like that. It was insane. Skyrim is way better than Morrowind. Yeah, I have Skyrim and I've played a bunch of it. All right. Do you support independence movements of every kind if the majority of the groups support the movement, like Kurds, Donbass, Quebec, etc.? I would if there was a popular mandate for it, yes. I don't know. In my mind, that's not the way forward. That's not the solution. But if an example, if in Catalonia, it's pretty obvious that the overwhelming majority of people want to leave Spain, then I'm for it. There's other places like Scotland and Quebec. Well, Scotland, I imagine that Brexit might change things quite drastically. I don't see the United Kingdom actually staying together if they still go through with this Brexit thing. I could see Scotland leaving pretty soon. But Quebec, Quebec nationalism is fairly dormant right now. Quebec separatism really is a thing that was born and is dying with the baby boomers, and millennials aren't really into that kind of thing anymore. So, for Scotland and for Catalonia and stuff like that, I think that I could very easily see if there's a popular mandate. Yeah, sure. I mean, we don't want people living under a government that they don't feel represents them. Should we worry? Take America turning full fascist is a sign that democracy might end soon in our countries. I live in the UK and you're Canadian. Maybe. I do think that if the US goes full fascist, we've got more immediate concerns, like the fact that a nuclear-armed country would be under the thumb of a single person, especially someone like Trump, who is very obviously rather unstable. But definitely, I think that it does show that liberal democracy is on tough grounds. Okay. Suppose you lived in AD 300 Italy. Would you rather be a tenant farmer in one of the country estates or a laborer in Rome? Definitely laborer farmer on a country estate. Being in the city I don't know, living in the city before 1910-ish was pretty gross, and you were very likely to get diseases and stuff like that. And you wouldn't have that much control over your life. I do think that being a tenant farmer on a country estate in 300 AD would be pretty chill. You work as much as you want. You give a little bit to the people who live above you, and then for the most part, you kind of just do your thing. I mean, it's a very simple life. All right. John Doe Skeletorat. What would transferring international trade onto the euro instead of the US dollar, working on the theory that a monetary unit is supported by multiple economies would be more stable? Yeah, I could see that working. Although by having a single currency, and with the greater aims of the European Union, isn't it that you want to move towards it basically being a single economy? Even then, it's a much bigger economy than the United States, and if the United States shows itself to be more volatile in the future, it could be something to go with. Although the euro has shown, with the panic over Grexit a few years ago, that it also has trouble. It has some trouble. Do worker democracies disenfranchise people who can't work? I worry about that in an automated future. Yeah. I definitely think that syndicalism is going to need is definitely not the way forward anymore. I think that we're going to need to deal with the fact that we don't live in an economy where everybody needs to nor has the capability to work, and that they still by virtue of existing have the right to a say and for a decent life. And so yeah, I don't think that the kind of syndicalist concept of worker rule is necessarily our way forward anymore. Okay. Especially because of automation. Sorry if you answered, but opinions on Brexit. Would you support it if it guaranteed the dissolution of the European Union and the so-called economic troika? No, Alexander. No. Keep the European Union together, please, for the stability of the world and everything. I mean, the EU has got some problems, but geez, breaking up the European Union would be a huge disaster. My opinion on Brexit, I think I've come clear, and I should probably not say much because people get mad, but I think that if the UK doesn't back away from it, doesn't do a second referendum, or if they don't just stop doing it, that they have a very dark future ahead of them, and that they're going to be objectively much worse off if they leave the European Union, to the point where I've argued that I don't think the United Kingdom would even stay together as a country, with Scotland and Northern Ireland and Gibraltar and all these things. I think that I don't see the UK having much of a future without the European Union. It's too important of a project to not be involved in. Thoughts on Nasserism? It's a product of its time. I definitely wouldn't advocate for a Nasser-type Ba'athist movement today. And also, the countries that sort of followed in Nasser's footsteps have turned into some of the worst dictators in human history, like Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad. But also, the 1950s was a very different time than now. So hard to make firm judgments like that. Thoughts on Edmund Burke and conservatism? I don't really know too much about that stuff. What's your thoughts on libertarian socialism? Isn't it usually just a better, a more couth or a more PC term to call anarcho-communism? I mean, if it's a softer version where it's not anarchism, it's just sort of a general term for left-wing libertarianism, then sure. I'll take any libertarian leftist I can get my hands on, to be honest. So, go for it. Do trade deficits matter? A lot of Trump's critics keep saying that he's dumb to be concerned about it. Yeah, trade deficits don't particularly matter. It's just a sign of different types of economies. What Trump doesn't realize is when he talks about the trade deficit, it's him not realizing that the United States economy isn't a manufacturing economy anymore, that it is a net importer of stuff. Basically, like a trade deficit means that they spend more on goods in other countries than they sell. But the thing is that America has for decades now been a financier and a service and knowledge work economy, not a manufacturing economy. And instead of adapting to their role in the international economy, Trump is like trying to bring up like he's trying to bring up more fear and resentment of like trying to bring back jobs that are not going to exist anymore, because like in our current neoliberal global economy, you can't do manufacturing successfully unless you go like hyper high tech and specialized, like in Germany where you're making like BMWs and shit, or you go like slave wages and like death, like in China where you have to put like suicide nets out to keep people from like just ending it all. So the United States, which doesn't really have the educated population to do like German style manufacturing, because like German style manufacturing requires like people with like doctorates in robotics to be on site to take care of things, or neither does America, I think, want to go towards like sweatshop labor. You gotta think about like America really needs to think like it's not really a place where that kind of stuff is done anymore. If you don't play Morrowind on stream, cliff racers will become real in Swarm Canada. Alrighty. What if I just never find out what a cliff racer is? Then I'm good. Alrighty. At some point, I'm going to get to watching videos, but you guys have so many questions, and they're good ones, too. Thoughts on Lindy Beige? I don't really know too much about him. I've watched a few of his videos. They seem okay if you're into that kind of thing. I wasn't, so I didn't subscribe. But I don't know. He could secretly have terrible opinions, but I have no idea. I watched his videos. They were cool. If you're into, like, armor and weapons and stuff, then sure. Cool. Watch away. But if he's like, I don't know if he's a secret reactionary or anything like that. Do you see anarchism as a meta-narrative? If so, is it compatible with deconstruction? Oh, boy. Alright, so... Oh, how do you answer that question? He has horrible opinions? Well, there you go. Then don't watch Lindy Beige, I guess. I just thought he was a guy who, like, puts on armor and shows you how medieval armor works. Yeah, Alexandria's opinions on my... the European Union's got a lot of issues, but, like, you know... I don't know if you remember Europe before the European Union, but it had a lot of problems, too. And those ones ended with, like, lots of deaths. Lindy Beige is a total reactionary. Armor YouTube is canceled. Oh, man. I did not know that. All right. I just thought that Lindy Beige was like this, like, I'm just not in, wasn't into that stuff, but I guess. I don't know the details. All right, so anarchism as a meta-narrative. Oh, okay. In the way that, like, anarchism as less like a specific set of policy instructions and like a coherent and cohesive worldview, and more as a set of principles to strive towards. I think that that's a way that you could call anarchism a meta-narrative. Like, I like the stuff that Non-Compete puts out about, like, the specifics about how to run anarchist societies. And I think that those are good, solid, like, things to investigate and think about and develop. But I do think that anarchism in many ways is radical anti-authoritarianism, like, which was a very long word. But basically, It's just the core political belief that nobody should ever dominate over others. And I think that, you know, there you go. That's all I can really say. What do you think about R. Kelly? I mean, I guess his music is kind of okay. Like, I guess it's a little forgettable, but like I know some R. Kelly songs are okay. But I also know that he's like a horrible predator of young girls, which is like totally not cool. I think there was like a documentary or something that came out about him recently. That's why everyone's talking about him. But yeah, he's a creepy guy. Lindy Page is a climate change denier and a chauvinist. Oh, that sucks. I hate when people like that are on YouTube. Will you watch some videos for fun in the stream, not only your old videos? Maybe. I want to like, this is kind of a series. Like I've been doing this for a few, and maybe when I run out of videos, we can do that. I don't know if it's gonna be tonight, but yeah. Is it so libertarian socialism is what you being used in Rojava? That's cool. Could a Trump fascist regime cause a dissolution of the United States? I don't think so. I feel like breaking up the United States would be rather intense. I don't like, the thing is, like, the divisions in America are not geographic. There's not like clear states or even counties that could be broken off into their own things. Yeah, so I don't see the US breaking up like that. Who's caused more death, Karl Marx or Milton Friedman? Let's definitely go with Friedman on that one. I think there's like a video by Bad Mouse that's kind of about that explains. Why do you think the left on YouTube is so small? 4chaners are alarmed about the left tube growing. I think that I mean, I don't think, like, so left tube started off as pretty small. It's starting to take off. The whole bread tube community is really taking off. I think that the left has, in general, had a history of being bad at organizing and being bad at telling good stories and being making like good content. Where the right, you know, with fascists and Nazis and stuff like that, they've always been very good at you know, putting on a show. And I think that really, like, with like ContraPoints and like a few other people, that like there's been at least a bit more of like a path for the left to like make content that is also entertaining, and things like the dirtbag left and just the resurgence of democratic socialism and all sorts of stuff in America and around the world has had it grow as sort of a dark as sort of a mirror to the dark fascist uprising that happened before, because LeftTube kind of was born out of reactionary right-wing YouTube, and then reactionary right-wing YouTube has been systematically getting like banned or like losing their platforms and things like that, while LeftTube has been growing wonderfully. And so I can imagine that's why 4chan is really freaking out right now. Because, you know, the left has never had its ideas aired out in public before, or at least in a very long time. And when people hear about it, they're like, oh, okay. That sounds nice. All right. Could a Trump fascist regime cause dissolution? Oh, we talked about that already. Have you read Globalist, The End of an Empire and the Rise of Neoliberalism? I have not read it, but that sounds like a good book. Do you think Hillary Clinton keeps hot sauce in her purse? Only when she's campaigning in the South. What would happen to information/service economy regions if the world went anarcho-communist? I think that a lot of what's called the information and service economy is actually pretty useless. It's one of those like David Graeber-esque bullshit jobs, a lot of them anyway. And so I think that a lot of them would just, their jobs would just no longer be needed in a post-capitalist economy. So in my mind, a lot of people would be out of work, but also that wouldn't matter. And I would imagine that we could get back into more primary resources and working on things that actually make our lives better, things that we'll enjoy more, things that we feel like we have more control over. Honestly, life will be, like under an anarchist economy, things would be a lot simpler, but they'd be better. You wouldn't work as much, but you probably do more physical. You might do more physical work, or you might not. But you would feel less. I feel like you just feel less like you're constantly under pressure. I feel like this, like, everyone has this, this unnameable, just thumb on their head that keep pushing them down, and you keep feeling like no matter how hard you work, you just can't get ahead, and that just something that isn't really right about this world. And I think that, like, just kind of take that away, people would feel a lot better. We work too much. We are far, far too overworked. We have like civilization level burnout because we have an economy that's based on relentless competition. And like, humans aren't meant to be this overworked, and so we're like exhausted. We're tired. We're depressed. We have anxiety. Like, no wonder there's so much mental illness. Like, it's terrible. What's your opinion on nuclear power? It's good. The fears about it are greatly exaggerated. And I would love if we had more nuclear power. What do you think about Jordan Peterson, and should Canada revoke his Canadian citizenship for being Jordan Peterson? Unfortunately, we got to keep him. I wouldn't want to take away his citizenship, but he does suck. He sucks a lot. My thought is that Jordan Peterson's getting more and more strange and insane as of late. He's starting to say more and more kooky things, like he's advocating an all red meat diet, and he's starting to say that like ancient people knew about DNA, and like he's like leaving his Patreon so that he can get paid through Bitcoin. So like, I feel like he's getting his 15 minutes are almost up. I feel like for a lot of these people, their 15 minutes are almost up. The fact that Stefan Molyneux is like getting more and more explicitly racist lately shows that like all of these like right-wing reactionary media figures are like, they're losing. Their grasp on the narrative is disappearing, and they're being exposed for the grifters that they actually were this whole time. And I think that's good news. What's the point of being anti-current power structures if you can't offer an alternative? The left didn't interest me for years because I didn't get what they wanted as the alternative. I just don't think that there's a single alternative. That's all I'm saying. I think there's different ones. I think that it's interesting stuff to develop and look at and do. But like, I would not be a person to say that there is a one and proper anarchist trademark society that works in one very specific way in all contexts and has like a book of rules, because like anarchism is like radical anti-authoritarian movements, and I do think that honestly it's like thinking about what the specifics of that society are not going to be like something that's eternal, if you know. It's something that we're always going to be developing and something we're always going to be looking at. We live in a society. All right. Do you know why gamers are more reactionary than most other communities? I think it comes from the sort of old narrative that that gamers are somehow a persecuted group. Like there's this whole idea like, oh man, back in the day, gamers used to like gamers had a rough time, rough go of it. We were treated like nerds, and we were put under. And then, you know, girls didn't like them. And, you know, our video games were like where we could be ourselves. But then video games became like mainstream. Now everybody plays video games, even your grandma. And to them, like something that they put so at the core of their identity disappeared. And that made them freak out and be reactionary. And then they're like, well, where's our video games being taken from? And it's like, it's going to like women and olds. And so they freaked out. And I think that's why they became really reactionary. And also all of their frustrations and anger over romantic. I think that people don't talk enough about how anger and resentment over romantic rejection plays quite a role in a lot of these people. Either way, that's for the psychologist to work out. All right, we're gonna watch some old videos now. I say 1 hour and 25 minutes into my stream. So when we left off last time, I think the last video we watched was the one I did for my wedding, which was quite a long time ago. So the next video we're going to do after that is a video that came out on June 11th, 2016. And it's a video on... I will say, this video I feel very proud of because I made it, and then like a year and a half later, the Extra History people did a 5-part series that was basically the exact video. The exact same thing that I did. It was a lot more detailed in depth, but I got the drop on them before Extra History came in. So this is the video I did on the Bronze Age collapse. Let me just you know, get my thing going. Here we go. Hey folks, if you are like many people these days, you fawn over the latest episode of The Walking Dead, enjoy movies like The Hunger Games, or lost your mind during Mad Max Fury Road, we seem to think a lot about what the apocalypse for our society might be like. Well, let me know if what if the apocalypse already happened? Say 3,200 years ago. Oh man. I forgot about these terrible things I bought on Fiverr. The Bronze Age has an interesting mystery to it. It ended in a remarkably fast time. I'm talking about an entire civilization with several major empires collapsing in just 30 to 50 years. In the blink of an eye, archaeologically speaking, the Mycenaeans, Minoans, and Hittites were wiped from the map. Other empires, like the Canaanites and Egyptians, faced massive declines. This decline between the late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age we call the Dark Age. It was several centuries where civilization disappeared. People forgot how to write. People retreated to remote mountaintop villages in Crete, and the monuments got much smaller in Egypt. Historian Robert Drew summed it as, quote, the worst disaster in ancient history, even more calamitous than the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. So what happened? As with many things in archaeology, there's a big handful of theories, and it's likely a mix. You seem to have talked faster back then. It's true. I really think that the way that I spoke back then was very much more in the vein. I think I got a comment earlier today that said that that feel when the channel, this CGP Grey knockoff channel becomes a decent left tube channel. And I do think that as I've matured more as a creator, I have developed my own style. But definitely back in 2016, I was still figuring out what I would be, and I definitely was taking inspiration from like CGP Grey or like Alternate History Hub and stuff like that. And so I spoke fast, and my videos were short because, like, you know, that's how YouTube videos were back in the day.
Of all of them. One of the primary things people suspect is an environmental confluence of disasters. Some suspect a change in temperatures akin to the Little Ice Age resulted in damage to crop yields, and using pollen, archaeologists have suspected that there was a major drought around the beginning of the collapse. Piled on top of all this, there's a volcano in Iceland that was due to erupt around that time, possibly reducing sunlight and further affecting crops. People in this age were not simply victims of environmental devastation. Many human causes for the collapse have been cited as well.
I really want to talk about this as like, this is like the thing I wanted to do in a lot more of my videos than I do now, and I really should, is talk more about how some of these big events in human history that we think had people associated with them were actually mostly because we were like victims of circumstance, and that, like, you know, the Bronze Age collapse could be linked to the collapse of, like, you know, just like a volcano going off, and like bad crop yields and droughts and things like that would have caused it, rather than like sea people, for example, which is like, you know, the most popular one.
A Ugarit slab refers to a series of invasions by at least 9 varieties of, quote, sea people. This mix of Luwians, Greeks, and Canaanites reportedly raided up and down the eastern Mediterranean coast. Many reported an increase in piracy, slave raiding, and other types of attacks. After these raids, new cultures...
I will also say I haven't watched the December Q&A yet, but I also am very excited over the fact that Matt Colville is a fan of ContraPoints. Now, there's been a lot of evidence that Matt Colville is super duper woke, but I want more.
And ethnicities seem to pop up around the region. Large migrations of Semitic, Indo-European, and Colchic tribes spread across the land. We think they moved because of the earlier mentioned droughts, possible earthquakes, and simple availability of new methods of warfare. What really turned the tides was the new tactic of infantry. People realized that the Ling Rush strategy worked, and that more people with more weapons could defeat even the most trained elites on chariots. The ability to mass-produce javelins and swords in castes opened the door for the many to defeat the few. Empires that relied on elites on chariots could no longer be able to assert their dominance. The last possible explanation comes from the realm of complexity theory. The simple societies that followed these Bronze Age empires suggest that different factors led to a general system collapse. Each cause would build upon and create feedback loops with other causes. It can lead to a very rapid collapse of a complicated system in a surprisingly short time. Bronze Age empires with top-heavy organization, centralized authority, and hyper-specialization actually made them vulnerable to quick collapse if just one cog in the machine came out of place. What do you guys think?
Oh man, general system collapse is a big part of my old PhD research that I don't talk enough about either, because this is when I think I was reading my books for my comprehensive exams while I was doing this video, and the whole talk about systems and networks and stuff like that. That's like whole, and distributive networks and all that kind of stuff is like all from that the books that I was reading, because I was doing this really weird comprehensive exam field where I was reading a whole lot of books about system theory and network theory and stuff like that, and so that's where I was. Did you watch that QAnon song I recommended? I don't remember this. Can you send it again? Can you like send it to me on Twitter or on Discord or however you like to send things? What's the evidence for the climate change idea? I feel like people always propose that when things in history go bad. Usually there's big collapses and things that are linked to things in the ice record. A lot of this stuff came out with studying of ice core samples, and a lot of those show that like there's these big fluctuations. Also, just you can see that a lot of these man-made events seem to spawn from around the same time. And so, like, for example, if like a bunch of displaced people are wandering around and raiding places, where do these people come from? And if you can see that there was if you're digging around and finding that there's like signs of rationing, and if there's signs that a drought happened, then you might think, oh, then I guess like this could be a link. This could like these people left this area and they had to go somewhere, and raiding was a lot more common back then. How would Americans revolt if most of the people who would support a fascist takeover own most of the firearms and other weapons? That's a good question. That's a different thing. I don't really have an answer to that. Have you ever read anything by Israel Finkelstein? No, but I know that somebody's been recommending it to me in the past, so I probably should. Was the crisis of the 3rd century climate-driven? I have no idea. I don't really know too much about that period either, so I'd have to read some stuff. Just search up QAnon song, Thought Gum. Okay. I'll write this down. Will you ever do my Canary Island suggestion vid? Maybe. I could get around to it. I'd have to look into it a little bit, because I know that it's like the Canary Islands are the first time that colonization happened. I have a few things that I want to do next, but I definitely will look out for it. All right, so that was the Bronze Age collapse video. I thought that was pretty fun. That video did pretty well, if I remember correctly. 21,000 views. That's decent for my videos. That's solidly okay. Would you do a video on Rafael Trujillo and the Haitian genocide? Oh my, I have seen some stuff from that, because I've actually been to the Dominican and I have been to Santo Domingo. And it's really weird when you go there and you see like manhole covers with the name Ciudad Trujillo on it, and it's like, oh, right, I forgot this used to be a dictatorship. All right, the next video coming up here is something I did. This is a video that's interesting. So this is a video that kind of plays on the same themes of like the moving to the new world and all that kind of stuff. And who started killing and attacks in Germany between World War? Oh, I don't know. Who started the killings and attacks in Germany between World War I and World War II? Parallels to today? The killings. It was, there's also, that's a really complicated question. There's a whole lot to unpack in there. But the general depression creating a collapse of, like an economic collapse that then like eroded people's trust in liberalism and led to all sorts of more radical movements, eventually resulting in fascism and things like that. Honestly, when I first saw your channel, I thought you were a closet fascist because every history channel I watched was. Oh, that's super sad. You mean modern colonization? What did I say? Anyways, yeah, modern colonization. The whole age of exploration period was pretty much started with the colonization of the Canarias Islands. Oh my, I did not know that people thought I was a closet fascist just because I was a history channel. Jeez. That's weird. You make better videos now. Thank you, Gad. That's very kind of you. Alright, so this next one, this is a video that I did that I think I was really proud of, but didn't get a whole lot of attention. It's only got 10,000 views now, but, oh, when you first watched your channel, you thought I was gay because I was so woke about LGBTQ plus stuff. I'll take that as a compliment. I am not nearly well dressed enough to be gay. I'm sorry. Are we hiding from Trump together? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So this is a video I did about why Columbus was looking for Asia. Because a lot of times when people talk about the story of like the age of exploration, they just kind of get to this thing because like they just think that like all of a sudden Columbus was like, hey, let's go to Asia. What they don't know is that there's actually like a reason why so many European powers were looking for another way to get to Asia. Like, why was this happening? and I want to talk a little bit about that, and that's sort of also the story about like what the sort of events that caused the Middle Ages to end and the Renaissance to begin and all sorts of stuff like that. So that's what this video is about.
How did the medieval age end? We use the term Renaissance, or more academically, the early modern period, but what divides them? I've talked a little previously about Columbus and his voyage to find Asia by sailing west, but what I want to answer today is, why was he trying that? There are several ingredients we must consider to understand what drove Columbus to look for Asia.
Don't spoil it.
Is about what he intended to do when he got there. For centuries, spices, silk, and China, from India and China, would travel across a long overland route to get to Europe. We call this the Silk Road. It was the reason big Mediterranean trade cities such as Alexandria and Venice were insanely rich. Through much of the medieval age, one of the big gates that Asian goods took to get into Europe was through the Roman Empire. Wait, Roman Empire? Not as class as we like to think. While the Western Catholic Roman Empire was clinging to existence in modern Germany, a powerful, Greek-speaking, Orthodox-worshipping Roman Empire ruled from the imperial capital of Constantinople. To distinguish this, we call it, typically, the Byzantine Empire. But to them, they were Romans, with a Caesar and everything. This is the next ingredient pushing Columbus. The Roman Empire was long past its prime. Turkish tribes migrated into Anatolia over a period of centuries, and conquest by conquest shrunk the Roman Empire. The most famous tribe, led by Osman I, was especially deadly. He would be the first sultan, or bey, of the Ottomans. Mongol invasions and the decline of Seljuk power drove a lot of the Turkish-speaking people in Anatolia under his rule. Skipping forward a few generations, the Ottomans had been on a successful campaign in Europe, conquering a vast amount of territory. In 1453, the Ottomans used early cannons to blast down the mighty walls that protected the Roman capital for centuries, and the Roman Empire finally collapsed. The Hagia Sophia, a giant Orthodox church, was turned into a mosque, and the Ottomans made it the seat of their mighty empire that would persist until the end of the First World War. This severely closed down the flow of goods into Europe from Asia. There was no buying these goods from Christians. Europe began to dream of finding alternate routes to Asia that would bypass the long arm of the Ottoman Empire. The first would be the Portuguese. They had already spent decades invading and conquering African trade. The Portuguese pushed exploration further and further down the western coast of Africa, looking for its southernmost point. Other European countries wanted to establish their own routes to Asia, and Columbus had his own theories on how to get there. What I like about this story is it shows how something like the fall of Constantinople can have massive ripple effects across the world. If you know of any other really cool butterfly effect type things in history,
man, this is like one of those videos that I'm like, I really wish that this one got more attention than it did, because I actually thought it was pretty clever, and I thought it was a nice video because it's something that people don't talk about enough, but it's really important. But yet, didn't do super great. I don't know why. But yeah, I thought that was a good one. Okay. See, there's a lot of talk about curry. I agree about how good curry is, so it should have done better. It should have. Maybe I should remake it sometime. Somebody was like, I got some like talks. I had like some conversations over the holidays about like what videos that I should do in 2019, and a couple of the conclusions that were come to were one, do some like video responses type videos, but with a little bit more content than the average video response to like other bigger YouTubers. And then another one was to sort of take other YouTube channels that are really good at making or thinking up of video ideas, but poor on execution, and sort of steal their idea and do it better. And then the third one was to just sort of remake some of my less successful videos that I felt very proud of and do them in a much better process. Hello, Dania. So but like this one, this might be on my list of something to come back Tell us about the history of the powerhouse, the Cell. I was actually going to do that at one point. That was... All right, I don't even know if this would fit on Step Back anymore. But there was a point where I definitely was thinking of doing a video on why I don't think there's going to be intelligent aliens in the galaxy. And it has to do, like, the history angle is about how completely like miraculous it was that the Cell got the mitochondria like millions and millions and actually probably billions of years ago. And how like that would be the reason why there's so that things were so out there. So that's sort of where we went. Yeah. Yeesh. Spanish anarchism video. It's on here, so we'll get to it. Got some other ones to watch on the way, though. We don't want to miss some of these. There's some good ones in here. We will get to it. We will get to it. Don't worry. That means we should probably start the next one. This next video is a quick one I thought I put together to be like a 4th of July video that'd be fun, but this one really never took off either. This is kind of a bad month for me, I guess.
Happy 4th of July, folks! At least the Americans out there. On July 4th, Americans celebrate their Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. Given what Great Britain did last week, it seems like they started a trend. Consequences be damned. 240 years later, Independence Day has become a wild party with fireworks, alcohol, and, well, after the alcohol part, I can't really remember. That is what we're going to talk about today. Historian William Rorabaugh took a look at alcohol in American history and found that there was a period where the entire country was off the rails.
Oh man. So I bought these things on Fiverr, and God, in retrospect, they are hideous.
William Rorabaugh was looking for a dissertation topic and found at Berkeley a bunch of temperance pamphlets from the 1820s and 30s. Temperance movements being activists trying to curb or stop the consumption of alcohol. Berkeley was a long way from the East Coast where these pamphlets came from, so Rorabaugh thought that meant there must have been quite a bit of drinking going on in this period. American life was heavily intertwined with the hooch. The tavern has long been a center for social gatherings, political debates, military strategizing, and of course, any good D&D campaign. Most historians of the Revolution, for example, would argue that
any good D&D campaign, holy crap, this is like almost, this is like about a year before I would ever actually play D&D, so I had no idea what I was talking about back then.
The story of the War of Independence could not be disassociated with the story of...
Oh yeah, so, but endosymbiosis has occurred multiple times in biological history, so why is it so miraculous? It's more the fact that it's the mitochondria, this like super power source got absorbed into the cell, and then on top of that, it allowed cells to become multicellular, like organisms to become multicellular, which was like a huge deal and changed things quite a bit. Do you think leftists should make videos playing video games to counter reactionary gamers? Well, Argos, I have never heard of a better argument for me to start a Twitch stream than that.
Old taverns. Alcohol, either as a drink or a remedy, was integral to early American life. Pubs were very much the center of the community. They'd go up next to courthouses and churches and aided them in their institutional functions. Before trials, the defendants, attorneys, judges, and jurymen would gather to drink. When things were settled out of court, where do you think it happened? If a big case drew a crowd, it might have been necessary to have the court case in the tavern, as it would seat everyone. Church congregations would meet up to drink before or after the church services. Pubs were so central, the government strictly regulated them and vetted bartenders extensively. The American Revolution became entwined with not only independence, but the desire to overturn strict upper-class social order. Liberty from the crown became somehow associated with the right to enjoy a few glasses of rum. Elite control of taverns.
I like Comrade Jeb Bush. That was a very funny joke. Oh man, I should stream Fortnite. I have played it like twice in the entire life of the game. And he's like, Boogie's a turbo-centrist. What's your favorite best Canadian beer? My favorite Canadian beer is called Bone Shaker, which is a Toronto microbrew that I really like. Leftist Gamer is H-Bomber Guy. Yeah. There's like I think it was like ContraPoints who did a tweet that said that like she's gone to like all of these university campuses and talked to students and said that like said that that H-Bomber Guy is probably responsible for talking down more people out of the alt-right than like anybody else who's ever heard of. Boogie is very anti-Trump. He's also very anti-AOC, and he's very anti-Sanders, and he's very anti-Warren. He's bad, but like in the other direction, and also does a lot of weird apologia for like Holocaust deniers, where he concedes way too many points. Either way, was part of the English control of America. It's not too surprising then that the first major revolt against the new American Republic was actually the Whiskey Rebellion. It was actually about the imposition of a tax on whiskey. They saw restricting whiskey as against revolutionary principles. Freedom often meant the freedom to drink. The 19th century would see the beginning of anti-alcohol sentiments. The rampant spread of alcoholism in America led to poverty and abuse. So, if you're going to partake in the great American tradition, do it safely. Happy 4th of July, my silly neighbors to the south. Hope you're having a good time. If you have any fun or quirky stories... Oh, man. So I should probably... I'm hearing that I should Twitch stream, but I shouldn't Twitch stream Fortnite because... I don't know, for reasons. Because the game is a mess. And also, I don't want to... I mean, there's a lot of 10-year-olds. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kane. That's very... I mean, appreciated. I'll play Fortnite ironically. So that was my American as Alcohol 4th of July video. That's another video. I think on this like July list here, or in this like summer of 2016, I made a lot of videos that I was very proud of, but just didn't perform super great. I don't know why, but that one I liked. Oh well. I guess nobody is as infatuated with booze as I am on some of these things. All right, so after this, though, because in early June, on June 4th, I believe, actually, on my wedding day, I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I did a Q&A series, and then I got a bunch of questions, and then I did a bunch of things. And so, like, this is, like, the first time, I think, in the channel's history that I, like, publicly acknowledge being super-duper left-wing. So, let's see where it goes. So the first question I got was what I think about Brexit. So let's see where this goes, because this happened about a month after the Brexit vote. So let's see where my thoughts were. Hey, folks. Q&A time, everyone. I decided to give as many questions as possible the room to breathe. So expect to see one come out about every week or so alongside your regular Step Back content. Jason Blood asked me what I think about the UK and the EU. Of course, I decided to tackle this question first, as it has already been a week since the Brexit vote, and this is as hot a take as I can muster as a historian. So, when I think of the Brexit vote, my mind goes to another referendum. Oh, and also a prologue to my Quebec referendum video. Nice. Here in Canada, when I was at the tender age of 6, there was a referendum on whether Quebec, la belle Provence, would leave our confederation. I was a French Canadian living outside of the province, and most of us were pretty scared it might happen. It failed, but by like 5,000 votes. And when the head campaigner for the Leave campaign blamed the defeat on, quote, the ethnic vote, separatism caused quite a bitter taste in a lot of mouths. Things have been cool in the last 21 years since. What does this have to do about the Brexit? Well, just like the vote,
We worried about a tanking Canadian dollar, dissolving other parts of the country, and general chaos. The only difference is Quebec said no to that. However, many people planned for what might happen if it passed, and the
I should say that this is based primarily off an essay that I wrote in college or in university that was about what would have happened if Quebec actually voted yes on a referendum and what people were thinking was going to happen, what the plans were.
establishment
And yes, that was Make Quebec Great Again in French.
politicians had settled on two major scenarios, and I could see a parallel with the UK and the EU. One school of thought was that to make it all work, both Canada and Quebec, or the UK and the EU, would make a lot of compromises and capitulations in order to make the exit as painless for both parties as possible. This could result in a Brexit that still has free migration and the European market, but nobody in Brussels, like Norway, except with Scotland and possibly Ireland on their way out, with much, much less bargaining power. The second school of thought was that the process would be long, painful, and difficult, that the years of negotiating Quebec's leaving Confederation would be such an ordeal that public support would erode, and the mere process of separation would drive another referendum that would fail. We are already seeing some major blowback from the Brexit pass.
I just want to pause on this picture of this guy and the pig for a little while. Fond memories. So as you can see, this happened right after the Brexit vote, so it shows a lot of what's his face, the UKIP guy who then Nigel Farage, that was his name, and Nigel Farage, and like as everyone knows, like shortly after the vote went down, he just went like, "All right, bye guys, bye," like enjoy your mess. Then there's of course the Prime Minister who fucked a pig. On Black Mirror, but also in real life if you read the memoir about him. The pig should be worried.
And the UK might be so sick of it that by the time it comes to put pen to paper, sentiment could call for another referendum. This is the solution I think the UK would need to keep Scotland and perhaps Ireland and Gibraltar. It also is setting a weird precedent.
Man, I feel like I actually had a pretty good take here. So basically, Brexit was either going to be a soft Brexit, where it was going to be like Norway, or it was going to be a hard Brexit, in which case it would probably fail. And from what I can tell, that is exactly what happened, or what's happening.
In an age where it seems far-right and semi-fascist factions are popping up everywhere. Something I think other like-minded people need to be more vigilant about opposing and combating when it emerges. More on that when I answer the Donald Trump question. Overall, I think this was a weird confluence of factors that I sincerely hope does not reflect the British people as much as it seems. It has dark forecasts for peace and stability in Europe, and I really hope it's not just because of the farcical belief that it was people speaking Polish or observing Ramadan that put British people in economic stagnation. Goldman Sachs and other big American banks caused it. We know this, with like numbers and everything.
So that was my Brexit video. I stand by a good amount of that take, even though it was like a week after Brexit happened. I feel like my position hasn't changed a whole lot. Just that, you know, maybe I thought the process might be a bit faster than this, but here we are, 2 years later. Oh man! All right, let's do this. Is my Rastafarian video. This has been this is actually like one of my most popular videos, so this will be fun one to look at, because this is like shows how good how's the next election's going to end. That really highly depends. I think that Gad, I was always saying that like I think that the 2020 election depends so much on how the Democratic primaries are going to go. And right now, because so much of the rules have changed with superdelegates and stuff like that, I don't really know how it's going to play out. But who knows? Will you answer my question about the accent? Well, should I put on a fake British accent in order to get more views because all the reactionaries have them? Maybe. Imagine my shock. I I don't know. Does Carl Benjamin? I've never watched one of his videos, but does he have a dumb gimmick as well that I don't know about? I don't know. All right, so the next video is my Rastafarian video, which is one of my most successful videos. So let's watch it. It's good. I haven't watched it in a while, actually, I think.
Hey, folks. For years, I have heard about the existence of Rastafari. Like many, I knew it was popular in Jamaica, had a special relationship with marijuana, and refers to something in Ethiopia. What I found was a simultaneously old and young religion that practices Christianity with a very different spin. As I said, Rastafari is a very young religion.
Oh, man. Just do a video in a Cajun accent. Oh, all right. We are going to talk about good old history today, mon frère. Guarantee we're going to have an excellent time talking about the past.
As far as religions go, it traces its origin to Jamaica in the 1930s. They formed around the coronation of Haile Selassie I to Emperor of Ethiopia. They are at their core Christians and saw Haile Selassie as the second coming. While adherents can go by the term Rastafarian, the term Rastafarianism is considered offensive. They have issue with any isms, really. It comes from the mix of Ras and Tafari. Ras being a title in Ethiopian nobility akin to being a duke.
If you want to have a good reactionary, you should call yourself by the name of an important ancient figure from the Near East, so you could ruin it forever. Okay, so I will call myself... Ooh, what's a good important ancient figure? Seti. There you go. I'll go by... No, because like you already got the extraterrestrial intelligence thing. We could go with Ramesses. We could go with Xerxes. It could be Xerxes. Hello, I'm Xerxes. Now we're going to talk about the women's. See you later, Hoar. Or Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar would be a pretty great name. Just to see anybody trying to spell it. That will be my reactionary name. It's the president. Time to listen to the president. A Baal. Baal would be a good one, too. I'm trying to think. Who was that? Cyrus. Yeah, that was the one. That was the leader of the Persian emperor who actually saved the Jews. It was Cyrus the Great. That'd be a good one. Oh, man, knowing better is doing a stream on the Trump speech. Oh, man. All right, so this is... does anyone get this reference? This is a very hot, spicy Dune reference. Which I believe because I had just finished reading Children of Dune around this point. Saladin. No, because then you're getting to like Saladin's a Muslim, so that would get them. They wouldn't like that. What's your favorite type of music? I used to be a metalhead, but I think right now I'm more into like kind of like Celtic-y stuff and like folk music and things like that. Nebuchadnezzar of Akkad. There you go.
And Tafari being the name of Haile Selassie before his coronation. They believe him to be the 225th generation descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Haile Selassie supposedly died in 1975, but Rastafarians believe he simply went into hiding in a secretive monastery, preparing to save the world. Much of the practice of Rastafari comes from a mix of Jamaican and Ethiopian cultural roots. The religion has many associations with Afrocentric and Pan-African movements. The church itself has a lineage going back to Ethiopian Christianity, and through them to the original Church of Alexandria, one of the first sects of Christianity. You might have heard of Coptic Christians. That's where it all comes from. Back in the 5th century, these Christians took their own path, very different from the Roman Empire's Christianity. They believe in God, whom they call Jah, and he is 3 in 1. They believe they made his son manifest in Jesus, and himself manifest in Haile Selassie. They do believe in much of the Bible, but that the years have corrupted its message.
Oh yeah, Hearthstone. Also a really terrible Hearthstone card. Anyways. Have you heard the real Mackenzies? I think I have.
The life of Rastafarians in...
Ooh, here we go. Babylon 5 reference. If anyone... I'm just realizing how old I am the more times I show references. I referenced Dune, which is like a book that came out in like the 60s. And now I'm referencing Babylon 5, a TV show that was popular in the mid-90s. So I'm batting 1,000 so far.
Involves abstaining from actions that they call Babylon. This includes materialism,
There we go. There's a Stellaris reference at least.
oppression, and succumbing to pleasures of the senses. They see Ethiopia as the birthplace of mankind and refer to it as Zion. Converting requires repatriation to Zion. Today, this can be physically moving to Ethiopia or emotionally, spiritually communing with it. We should talk a little bit about the role of marijuana. They see cannabis...
Marijuana! It's funny, I would never use the term marijuana anymore. Now that, like, it's just cannabis now. That's like... I would never... I don't know.
as the leaf of the tree of life from the Bible. To them, using it is sacramental, and mentioned in the book of Revelation, referring to an herb that would heal nations. Pipes need to be dedicated to Haile Selassie before smoking. They believe cannabis burns corruption from the human heart. They call it ganja, and smoke it at special reasoning ceremonies. That being said, use is not required to practice Rastafari. Rastafari makes a big deal of avoiding sects and denomination. However, there are three major umbrellas that they call mansions. The prominent being the 12 tribes of Israel, Nyambingi, and Bobo Ashanti. As far as food goes, many are vegetarian, and some only keep from shellfish and pork. They believe that in the books of Leviticus and Numbers, that law requires followers grow dreadlocks. The length of one's dreadlocks shows their time spent as a Rastafarian, and is a measure of wisdom and age. Combs,
cat right
scissors,
here wants to get
and
up.
razors are inventions of Babylon and Rome, not good places in their eyes. Music is hugely important to the practice and popularity of the religion. They have special chants for their grounding ceremonies and buru
Oh,
drumming.
there we go.
And we can't. Music is hugely important to the practice and
We just missed a
popularity of the
Skyrim
religion.
reference. At least
have
that's a reference that would happen in the 21st century. There you go.
Special chants for their grounding ceremonies and buru drumming. And we can't talk about Rastafari without mentioning its biggest international ambassador, Bob Marley. Much of the popularity of Rastafari comes from the international popularity of reggae music, and Bob Marley in particular. Many of his songs were about Rastafari and its way of life. People aren't sure how many Rastafarians there are in the world. They compose about 22,000 to 100,000 Jamaicans, or about 5% of their population. As I said, a lot of variation. There are also many communities
put a stream in your stream so you
Botswana,
can stream live
Canada,
stream.
the Democratic Republic of Congo, Japan, Madagascar, Malawi, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Either way, I wanted to share this all with you guys. No other religion in my memory has such a gap between name recognition.
Trump just announced a standard arrest warrant on all Democrat congresspersons. That sounds... What? All right, I can't imagine that that's true. That's way too much. That's way too far. Okay. Cat wants attention. Let's get back to this.
And even basic understanding of what it's about. If there's something really cool about this very unique religion I didn't mention, be sure to tell us about it down below. Like and share if you want to help out the channel, and of course subscribe to get yourself more Step Back, Curb, or Stomp.
Oh man, so that was my Rastafari video. It's still pretty good. Still holds up. Still gets a lot of views even today. Was Marcus Garvey a Rastafarian? I don't think he was, but... Oh, man. Did you know that German folklore state that mandrakes grow from where dead criminals lie, leaving sperms? Read Alarune. Well, now I gotta remember for that one for whenever I think I just bought a new monster manual that has mandrakes in them, so... Yeah, Marcus was a bit before all that stuff. All right, question Q&A number 2. Let's do this.
Hey folks, welcome to another installment of my Q&A. A number of you asked questions about me, the person. So I decided, in order not to be too self-indulgent, to do one video covering them all. Johnny, roll the intro!
So clever. So clever.
Jason Schneider asks,
Oh my. I wonder if this person is even still following my videos. That's so long ago.
what do I do as a job or education? Funny you should ask, Jason. I kind of do both. I am a PhD student in history. I'm done taking
Oh man. Not anymore. Drop the fuck out.
classes, so I now work on my dissertation, while also making money as a teaching assistant, or TA, and as a research assistant. Yes, some of my students have found my videos, but not many.
Who's Johnny? I have no idea.
Jimmy Tyson asks, what got me first interested in history? Was it a historical event, a teacher, or something I always liked? Mapper Animations asked roughly the same question. This is a bit of a longer story. My parents are history buffs, and as a child, my summer was spent...
This is actually an accurate map of all of the states and all of the provinces that I have been to. And I just realized that in the 2 years since, I actually haven't added any new names. So that is all of the provinces and all of the states that I have been to. Yay. I think the only ones that aren't... So, like, the Arctic territories I haven't been to. I haven't been to Newfoundland. I haven't been to Nova Scotia or PEI in Canada. And I haven't been to Washington or Oregon or Arkansas. I went to all the other ones, though.
spent driving around the United States and
Oh, yeah, and also I haven't been to Alaska or Hawaii.
Canada, seeing any old house or battlefield they could find. That likely got me most of the way there.
Overwatch!
In high school, I thought I was going to be a musician, but I took history for fun. When music didn't work out, I had to get back on the education train. At first, I was really into sociology, and considered taking that, but around the time I needed to do applications, I came across the podcast Hardcore History. It nudged me just a bit in the right direction, and made me realize my whole life was basically pointing to history. I applied, and didn't look back.
I legit want this tattoo. My wife does not want me to get it, but I really want a no regrets tattoo.
Irfan asks, if you could live in any time period, when would it be? And if you could live in any country in the world, what would it be? I mean, I really like antibiotics and the internet, so now is pretty much the best time to be around, but that feels like cheating. I think I'd want to be in the 1920s. There was so much of the future of the world up for grabs, and important struggles to join. I think...
Do you still like Dan Carlin? I mean, since I made this, like, he did not handle the Trump election well. He basically, like, mentally shut down, and then hardcore histories have been, like, super rare in the last, like, couple years. So, like, honestly, I just don't even think about Dan Carlin much anymore because he barely puts out any content. I don't even know how he's still making money. Did you know that the PewDiePie audience has grown from 12 years old to 14? Oh boy.
I think I could have had a life of meaning there. Now, everything is so ambiguous. As for country, I often dream of moving to Europe. I'd rather...
What do you think of Timothy Snyder? I don't know Timothy Snyder.
move to a social democracy like France or something, where workers and life is respected rather than the hyper-moralist, overworked North America. Soliloquy asks, what are your favorite games, including video games as well as other types of games? Oh geez. Right now I play an embarrassing amount of Overwatch and load
This is still true, and that is still my gamer tag. Huh.
up Stellaris whenever I need something I can do while watching videos or listening.
Yeah. Stellaris. That's still a game I play a lot too. Wow, this hasn't changed a whole lot.
To podcasts. I have other games I poke at now and again. Diablo 3 when a new season starts. Hearthstone, usually only Arena,
Yeah, I don't really play Hearthstone no more, so that's gone.
until I remember how much of a money grab it is. Crusader Kings 2, Europa Universalis 4, and potentially Hearts of Iron 4. Usually,
Yeah, that was before Hearts of Iron 4 came out, and then I realized I didn't like it. I also don't play really EU4 all that much. I didn't even play it back then. I don't even know why I said it. This is actually from a real playthrough of Victoria 2 I played once, though, where I played as... I broke off Quebec into its own country and then became a world superpower. It was pretty great.
whichever one got updates most recently. I even gave Pokemon Go a stab the other night, and will probably buy No Man's Sky and Crowfall.
Well, No Man's Sky came out, and that was a bit of a disappointment. Crowfall is a game that is like almost vaporware. It was a game I kickstarted like years ago, and yet it's still waiting for it to ever come out.
I have become a little scatterbrained as a gamer lately. Omar, from Knowledgeable Reaction, by the way, check out the channel, pretty good. He asks, what historical location/period are you studying for your graduate work? Alright, so my original interest was in studying pre-Columbian Aztec spirituality. But when I was 2 years into my bachelor's and found out that I would need to, 1, learn 2 languages, one of which is only spoken by remote indigenous tribes in Mexico, 2, change majors from history to anthropology, meaning basically restarting university, and 3, switch schools because my liberal arts school had no anthropology department. I decided against that. I went looking for alternatives and settled on a really cool project tackling the history of the digital age. I'm studying how current events become history by looking at the September 11th attacks. Short story, I'm a 9/11ologist who also is trying to do history with data, analytics, and automation.
Yeah, that's basically why my PhD fell apart, because then I was like, oh, learning high-level computer science is hard.
I'm weird. Nuclear Elevator asks, what's your political ideology?
Oh man, ideology. Thoughts on Gamergate? Gamergate was a misogynistic freakout over nothing. Under the guise, my opinion about Gamergate is basically the same as the Innuendo Studios. His video on the Innuendo Studios video is way better at articulating why Gamergate was. I mean, it was a misogynistic, reactionary movement that really we all should have seen as the prologue to our current very, very stupid moment. But we really should have seen it, the writing on the wall. And Innuendo Studios is broke it down in a much more eloquent way than I can. So go check that out.
Listen to the lyrics of the song.
I'm not really super into to Zizek, by the way. I just because of the word ideology and how he likes to say the word ideology a lot and eating from the trash can all the time. Hey, Michael Collins, welcome to the stream.
Imagine by John Lennon. Basically me. I'm often accused of being very politically naive, but I want a better world and I have a short patience for politics. Political writers I like are Noam Chomsky, Pyotr Kropotkin, and Emma Goldman. So
shit. Like, if you didn't know who those people were and I just said stuff, like, there you go. That was when I officially outed myself in video.
So, whatever pejorative for leftists you want to call me, liberal, socialist, communist, anarchist, hippie, SJW, cuck, I'll wear it as a badge of honor. Equality for everyone. Nobody has to get hurt, and liberation to live life as you see fit. Seems pretty simple to me, and everyone else seems obsessed with making it complicated. Thanks for these questions, everyone. Last weekend, I just passed 2,000 subscribers. The channel doubled in subscribership in less than a week. So if you can, I have a little survey in the
Oh yeah, that was a real big week. That was when I did a video on the Soliloquy channel that really took off. All right, let's do the 255 AD request and do the last one on this page before we stop watching videos. Let's watch the Spanish Civil War, Anarchists in the Spanish Civil War video that I think a lot of you probably found this channel through. I think Thought Slime said that it was either this or the Nestor Mackno video that he found first. Thoughts on Fallout 76. I haven't played it, but I haven't heard good things. I was kind of, when people first announced it and everyone was freaking out that it was a survival online game and not like another Fallout game, I was pretty, I was not one of the people who was disappointed. I was like, all right, let's see it. Let's see if it's good or not. But then it came out, and I've heard it's like really buggy and it's really not fun, and people are like having issues, and like servers are buggy and like all sorts of stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. I feel like it's gonna be like one of those games like No Man's Sky that it's gonna get dropped by the capital G gamers, and then like a year later it's gonna get some patches and it's gonna be really good, and then maybe I'll play it.
Hola, folks. This month is the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the...
All right, this is this one shot took me so much more work than I should have. If you look, I drew every single one of those flags, including, if you look, it's the factions. So there's like the leftist factions on one side and the fascist factions on the other. And then I added like a Hitler Trump Pence symbol that they floated for like a week until they realized it was super Nazi-like and they dropped it. You found this channel literally 2.5 hours ago through this video. Oh, sweet. Is the police coming for your weed? No, I just have the window open. I live downtown in Toronto, so like there's, you know, you see things all the time.
Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War is in many ways a dark
Look, I made a Poland ball reference. I'm sure you guys love that. 'Cause yeah, Poland ball don't like World War II.
Prologue to the conflict that will engulf Europe and the world in 1939. Many remember the Spanish Civil War as a fight between fascist nationalists led by Francisco Franco and the democratic/communist Republicans in power at the time. However, there was a third, less remembered faction in that war, a group targeted by Republicans and fascists alike. People who believed that there was no government like no government. These people I am here to talk about today.
You live in Toronto. Yeah, Ina is in Toronto. I've talked to her on one occasion anyways on Twitter. She's never had me on the I haven't been asked to come on the show yet though. I don't know if that's going to happen. I feel like she can field more high profile guests than myself.
While the first shots were being fired between Republicans and fascists, another revolution was taking place. Workers all over the country were rebelling against their bosses. In places like Catalonia, Aragon, Andalusia, and parts of the region around Valencia, workers took control of the economy.
Oh yeah, so workers taking control of the economy, and I'd put this. Does anybody know what this is a reference to? This is another, like, 90s video game / culture reference that only I imagine a lot of you will probably get, but just to show just how dated all my references are. Yeah, it's StarCraft.
In some places, such as Catalonia, 75% of the economy ended up under the control of the rebelling workers, and they clashed against the communist Republican-controlled areas of the embattled republic. So what exactly did this workers' takeover look like? Factories became co-ops, run by committees of workers. Farms became collectivized and turned into anarchist communes. Even barbershops, restaurants, and hotels were usurped by the workers who tossed out the bosses.
I realized in this moment that at the time I couldn't think of something to represent hotels, but I totally should have drawn myself in a robe. I missed a good opportunity there.
This workers' rebellion was 8 million people strong. In the center of one of the bloodiest periods in Spanish history, these workers went on to build the society of many a hippie's dream. But who organized this movement? The Confederación Nacional del Trabajo, or the National Confederation of Labor, an anarchist union and militia loosely allied with the Republicans? They worked closely with the Federación Anarquista Ibérica, or the Iberian Anarchist Federation. The two groups are often referred to collectively as the CNT-FAI. The famous British author George Orwell wrote about this strange revolution in
Hey, there's an Animal Farm reference.
his book Homage to Catalonia. He described it as people building a new society in the shell of the old, and marveled at how effectively these people seemingly defied what everyone called human nature. Hierarchies were dissolved, wealth redistributed, and people were fine with it. What really stands out about this movement is how quickly a working libertarian socialist economy developed and thrived. It was based on horizontal, decentralized coordination. Industrial collectives.
I guess this was back before we knew that, like, libertarians, as, like, in the Ron Paul sense, were basically just Nazis waiting for, like, permission. But oh well.
Freely.
I also think I put an I am not a merry man thing in there, which is a reference to, what's it called? Star Trek Next Generation. Just so that all the dated references can come to light.
They gave what they could and took what they needed from agrarian communes. They saw the entire concept of private property as authoritarian in nature. University of Geneva professor Andrea Altmares described it like this: in the midst of the Civil War, the anarchists have proved themselves to be political organizers of the first rank. They kindled in everyone the required sense of responsibility and knew how, by eloquent appeals, to keep alive the spirit of sacrifice and for the general welfare of the people. As a social democrat, I speak here with inner joy and sincere admiration of my experiences in Catalonia. The anti-capitalist transformation took place here without their having to resort to a dictatorship. The members of the syndicates are their own masters and carry on the production and distribution of the products of labor under their own management with the advice of technical experts in whom they have confidence. The enthusiasm of the workers is so great that they scorn any personal advantage and are concerned only for the welfare of all. As the war dragged on, month after bloody month, the workers' enthusiasm began to dwindle. The Communist Party of Spain became the dominant authority in the Republican forces. This Stalinist party took centrality because the Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, was the biggest source of foreign aid for the Republican war effort. To them, war was not the time for revolution, and the goal was to defeat Franco, not capitalism. Groups that were too outspoken against the new Stalinist authority quickly found their aid cut off. Under threat of losing their aid, many of these new revolutionary communities reverted to the way it was before the war, and were largely dead by the time Franco emerged victorious in 1939. I wanted to share this story with you because the Spanish Civil War is often eclipsed by the much bigger war that comes months after. Also, when we talk about war in history, it often drowns out everything else. And in this corner of the world, during horrible conflict, an unlikely society thrived, despite everyone's assumptions about economics, politics, and humanity. It showed, however briefly, that we are capable of managing our societies in so many more ways than today's extremely narrow ideologies assume. I really want to know what you guys think about this tiny window into utopic living. Be sure to let me know what you think down below. Share this video to help improve history education on the internet, and of course subscribe for more Step Back.
Oh man, that's a good one. This video is probably responsible not so much for getting me the most amount of subscribers, but for getting the most amount of, like, Step Back fans. Like, I feel like more of you guys in the chat have probably come to the channel through this video than anything else. Maybe less so because this video is now getting up in age, but yeah, this was like the most like overtly like leftist that I ever got during that I got in a video. All right, I think that's gonna be it for my old videos. We can probably come back to this in a future installment of this show, but somebody did say they wanted me to watch this QAnon video, so okay, let's do this. Why not? I've never seen this before, so If everyone, we'll do this and then we'll move on. I imagine it's this one here. I take no responsibility for what is in this because I have not seen this video. So if it does a bad, then I denounce and reject it.
You guys know what this represents? Maybe it's the calm before the storm. Could be the calm before the storm. We have the world's great military people in this room, I will tell you that.
Crooked bankers, Rothschild on the run. Deep state players, we know what you've done. A light is coming in, expose your every sin. As the mainstream media lies come undone. There's a great man that drives them all insane, and he's gonna make America great again. I really want to introduce you to my friend Q and the people of the Great Awakening. Not long ago, as we all know, the CIA and NSA...
This is just awful. This is just like... Is this a joke? Like, is this supposed to be, like, making fun of these QAnon people? This just seems like a really lame QAnon person made a rap. Oh, man. This isn't ironic. No, I don't think so. It's just sad. I don't want to expose you guys to that. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Oh. Alright, let's just, let's just hang out for a little bit before I go quietly into that good night, because I am tired and want to go to sleep at some point. Oh, man. Hey, friends. How are we doing? We watched a lot of good videos today. And also, yeah, Will over at Knowing Better is doing a stream right now. So I imagine I'm hemorrhaging all of those subscribers or those people to go watch him. I don't know. Things still look pretty good. I could definitely see it around 9 o'clock though. Things started to drop off. So, yeah, what do you guys want to talk about before the bedtime? You tried giving a super chat for you forgot your password. Aw, sorry, Nicholas. I appreciate it's the thought that counts. The centrists are gone. Let's talk, Kami. Yeah, all the centrists went to go watch Will. Hang out with him and his cat snakes. What do you think of the chance of a worker shortage happening at the same time of climate change hitting in full? How would capitalism respond? Honestly, I think I'm more in the thought that, like, the thing is that climate change is not a thing that's going to hit in any real way. It's going to be a process, and it's going to happen slow enough that we're not going to ever see... Like, we're all going to say things that are related to climate change, but it's going to be like a thing where, like... more and more things will happen and people will sort of deny that it's about climate change, but it's about climate change. And so it's never going to be like a quick process. So that's the thing. Why is it called a world war when the only major powers and their dominions were involved? The reason is because there's no real formal definition for a world war. Typically, world wars are called that because I think one time somebody said that the reason is because significant fighting happened on multiple continents. That would be like a world war. But then, like, wouldn't any of those, like, colonial conflicts be called a world war? Honestly, there's not really, like, a definition of a world war that's, like, solid, you know? Do you think it's better for the algorithms to upload daily like Sargon, or to make failed videos that take more time, like H-Bomber Guy, to generate more interest in leftism? I think that it really depends upon the kind of content you're putting out. What you really need to do is hit a stride that works for you. Like, I think that H-Bomber Guy makes his videos the way he does, because, like, I think that doing, like, high quality stuff like that, or doing, like, high volume or high quality, are both successful strategies. I would say that if you are going to do the daily thing, you better be ready for a ride, because it's going to be tough. But, like, for me, I try to strike a balance by making my longer, more detailed videos, but at the same time putting out weekly content through the quick steps and doing these streams. So I try to keep in touch with my audience on a more regular basis and build that relationship with you guys, and kind of keep more in touch about what's going on, while H-Bomber Guy will more, like, go off into the woods for several months and then come back with an amazing video. And I try to, and, you know, Sargon will just spew out shit every day because he doesn't have to do any work. He doesn't have to do any research for his videos. So in my mind, I try to do something between the two. I would say just find whichever type you're comfortable with, and then do it. But do it intentionally. Don't just make videos ad hoc whenever you feel like them. If you want to start a channel, you should either have a strategy of either releasing a lot of videos, or, like, working on, or releasing a few videos but still putting a lot of work into them. Have Q and Cody made amends? Because I would like that happen to return. Yes. Yeah, Cody and I had a nice Facebook conversation a few weeks ago, and it should be, I think, it could be happening as soon as this weekend. That would happen again. So that you can look forward to that. How long do you think it will be till we can revolt because of the government shutdown? Quite a while. Depends upon how long people are willing to work without pay, but, like, most of the police and stuff, like military and stuff like that, are gonna duke it out. What did you fight about? I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but basically about some, what's it called? The deal with Twitter's fight over Sharia law and stuff. On Cody's last stream, he stated that Tristan has been around due to his work. I have not. I did not go. He was trying to do a stream last Sunday, and I did not go to it because I did not have a computer. I haven't had a computer in like a month. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, I do know that, like, I went through security. I went through security at TSA like about a week ago during the furlough, and those TSA people were not they were not being hardcore about their job. They were totally checked out. Why is your sister alt-right? I would not call her alt-right anymore. It's more that she doesn't really consider what her positions are or what effects they'll have on other people. She doesn't really think, period, about anything, really. So her position on many things is just whatever the person she spends the most time with's opinion is. And so I guess she probably had a shitty boyfriend or something at the time and had a lot of reactionary opinions. Now she doesn't really care. She's really just not that much of an intellectual, so that's her thing. She just got, like, involved with, I guess, somebody who watched a lot of anti-feminism videos, and that's where she got all alt-righty. You're gonna start the NELF, the New England Liberation Front? Oh, man. Alrighty. All right, let's wrap up the stream. Does anyone have any last questions? And then I will shut down for the night. I'm getting pretty sleepy, and I got an early morning tomorrow. Let's get some last questions. What if the 7 Years' War never happened? Oh boy, that'd be pretty big. When will you appear in a Wreck Feminist compilation? I don't know. I honestly don't know about that stuff. Like, I never get, for some reason, like, Thought Slime and I are really good friends, and yet, for some reason, Thought Slime gets so much more hate from the right, and the right-wing people never, ever seem to, I never seem to end up on their radar. They just don't care about me. I'm just irrelevant to them, so sometimes I feel like it's like, it hurts me, you know, because, like, if I had, like, Sargon do a 5-hour stream about how much he thought I was a cuck or something, I, like, at least would, like, feel like I was doing something good for the world, but it just hasn't happened. Well, thank you very much, Nicholas. I appreciate that. Thank you for the $5. It really helps. It really does. These kinds of things really make me able to keep this going. So it is appreciated. You're too good for them. Thank you, Fledgling. Okay, so... And yeah, Gad, I have no idea how you're up so late. Did you hear about Sabaton making a History Channel? Like, Sabaton is in, like, the German power metal band? Or something else? Can leftists help things in failed communist states like North Korea? I mean, the best thing that you could do for the North Koreans at the moment is trying to sneak literature into the country, which a lot of Christians in South Korea do. Honestly, just getting them... Hashtag make Sargon call Tristan a cuck 2019. We can only hope. That'll be one of the signs that I made it. Oh man, so Sabaton, the band, is making a History Channel. That's hilarious. Oh man. They did some songs for Paradox, didn't they? They did like a soundtrack for EU4 or something like that, if I remember correctly. I used to be into like the power metal scene. Like that was my jam when I was a teenager, so I have vague memories of Sabaton. So that's great. That's great. All right. I think I'm starting. I can feel the train leaving the station. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It's so good to be back. I love doing this, and I'm glad that Step Back Tonight is back on the air. We'll see y'all next week for another one of these. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm excited to find out. Can we both go to Sleepy Time Junction? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Let's all go to Sleepy Time Junction together. Everybody, have a good night. Sleep well. I'm like almost in ASMR territory at this point. Goodbye, friends. Dream of a future. Fully automated luxury space communism.